Dusty concrete garage floors. No matter how many times you sweep the things, you get the same result. Dust upon dust upon dust. It drives me mad, and today I think I've found a way to fix it. Because I've stumbled upon this stuff, epoxy resin garage floor paint, which I think is going to fix the problem. So I've been looking for a solution to this problem for a little while, and you've got a couple of choices. You could use garage floor tiles. I'll put a link in the description where I've done that previously, and that would of course fix the problem, but I don't really want garage floor tiles in here. I wanted this to be painted, and the problem with normal garage paints, it chips, it doesn't adhere properly, and it just in time doesn't look very good. And a friend of mine recommended Resin Coat. So I spoke to Resin Coat, and they were kind enough to send me one of their kits to try out. This is not paid, and there's no obligation to say anything good about it. It is just they sent me it, and I'll try it out and I'll let you know what I think. I've never used it before, so we're going to learn together as we go through this one. I've got a good idea of the process from other jobs I've done, but I've never used an epoxy resin on a bare concrete garage floor like this one. Now, dependent what sort of finish you want, preparation's going to be key. That's always going to be the case. And if you've got a smoother floor to start with, you'll get a smoother finish. It'll just be painted with your epoxy resin. So this floor here is not that well finished. It's a little bit rough, but there's not really many lumps and bumps, so I'm not too worried about that. Now, whilst we're on floor preparation, you can see there's a few lumps and bumps. What you want to do is just go around and remove those, because anything loose, if it's loose now, it will still be loose afterwards, and it will eventually come away and you'll be left with a patch that doesn't have any resin on it. So go around, remove any of these loose bits and get off any debris on the surface. And if you've got any holes in the surface that you deem bad enough to repair, I'd use a repair concrete on them, and I'll pop a link in the description to one that I'd recommend. You can just patch those little holes in so that you've got a nice level and smooth finish to work with. If you want it to be a really nice smooth finish, I would advise using a mechanical grinder or hiring one to get this nice and smooth before you start. For me, the floor condition isn't too bad. I just want to combat that dust problem. And you can see the brush doesn't really work, as we know, so I've got the vacuum out and given this a good vacuum before we make a start. Now, I've picked today, the sun's now starting to come out because it is above 7 degrees. We need to make sure that we remain above 7 degrees throughout this process for the epoxy to cure properly, or at least that's what it says on the Resin Coat tins. Today we'll have the epoxy primer, tomorrow the first coat of the epoxy colour, and the day after the final coat. So it's going to take a period of 3 days. So you need to make sure you've got reasonable weather throughout those 3 days. Now, with that in mind, the first thing we're going to do is prime and cut in around the edges with our epoxy primer. This is a damp tolerant epoxy primer supplied with the kit. You've got a part A and a part B that you need to mix together. They supplied the brushes as well, and basically what we're going to do is cut in first, because once we've opened this, we're only going to get 20 minutes to work with it. So I'm going to use this small 2.5 kilogram unit first, because if it does start to go off, I don't want to mix up the 5. I want to use the 2.5 first. Now, I've got a piece of old board here to mix up on, because I don't want this to go on anything that I don't want it to stay on. And I've got the part A and part B of the primer. Now, of course, PPE before we touch any of this stuff, goggles, gloves and a suit I'd certainly recommend, and if you're in enclosed space, probably a mask as well, but I'm presenting to camera so I haven't got a mask on because you won't be able to hear me. So we're going to open this up. We need to mix part A for a couple of minutes first, and they've given us in the kit a little paddle, which is nice of them. A slow speed I think is going to be better, and let's just get mixing. Now we're going to introduce part B of the primer. Now once this is introduced, we're only going to get 20 minutes of this pot. So we're going to pop all of part B into part A. Look at that, it looks like treacle. There we go, and then we're going to mix the two together. We need to do this for another 60 seconds. Remember, once this is mixed, I've only got 20 minutes to work with it, so I'm going to get straight on with the cutting in. So I can't slow down to talk to you a huge amount in depth because I've only got that 20 minutes and I've already spent 10 going around the rest of this garage. The primer's quite thick, and especially on quite a coarse concrete like this, it's quite hard, harder than you'd imagine, to cut in. But much to my surprise, it has come in the grey colour, so my guess is any bits that kind of don't look perfect will probably be able to be taken up by the paint. You can see if there's a loose bit there, got a little bit of loose concrete in there. It's not ideal, it doesn't really take it up very well, which is probably where a little bit of repair concrete would have made that a little bit easier. So let's make a start and get this thing on, because again, we've only got that 20 minutes. I'm expecting this to look a little bit patchy to start with, and then of course our finishing coat is going to take up any of that patchiness. Now I just work my way out towards the door of the garage, not too dissimilarly to how you would if you were painting a wall, except it's a little bit harder. And that is our first primer coat. In fact, there's only one primer coat, but that is the primer done. And under here, it's just sweat, it's just pure sweat. The one thing that surprised me with this, it has gone completely as expected, but the one thing that surprised me is how hard it is to do this. I'm about 10 minutes over, but luckily the pot is still workable. It did start to pull at the end, it did start to get really difficult at the end there. So you will run out of time, and on a hotter day that's going to be even worse. So make sure you've got someone to help you if you're on a big garage like this. I've got no one to help me today, I'm here on my own. It is what it is, but it is definitely harder to use than I thought. That said, the result so far is as expected, and it's definitely a nice easy DIY job in that respect. Now I'm not going to make you sit and watch paint dry because you'll get bored, so we'll come back in the morning and do the first of our top coats. But before I do that, subscribing to this channel is completely free. It costs nothing and it helps me hugely, so please hit subscribe if you haven't already, and hit like, because that brings this video to more people. YouTube will show it to more people and it'll help more people. I'll see you in the morning. So it's the next morning, sun's out, it's warming up. It's early at the moment, I'm going to give it a couple of hours. It's only 8 o'clock and it's actually 7 degrees now, but I want it to come up a little bit. It's going to be 9 degrees in an hour or two, so I'm going to wait and just let that temperature come up a bit so that it doesn't take ages for this next coat to go off. So this has gone off overnight super hard, and it really has sealed the whole of this floor. And there's a couple of little bits where of course it was patchy and it missed, but that's okay. I think we'll catch that on the next coat or two. But this really has gone off rock hard. It's not tacky anymore, and that's the key thing. You can't do the next coat whilst this is tacky. So it looks good to go, and I'm quite excited to get the first top coat on. So we're now going to mix up our floor paint. Again, we've got part A and part B. I'm going to mix up the small tub first and do the cutting in just like I did before. Now the paint scuttle has actually gone rock hard in there, so I don't need a new one. I can just carry on with this one because it has set really hard in there, and we'll do the cutting in first. Now I'm hoping that this time it's easier because we've got a nice sealed floor, it's not as porous, and it should be a bit easier. So let's get this mixed and get that first top coat on. Now this coat certainly seems a bit easier to use. It seems a little runnier than that primer coat. That might well be because now we've not got that porous concrete that we're going on to, but it is a lot easier and a lot faster to work with so far. I apologise if I've not got loads of time to speak to you through this process, but I think this highlights the truth that it's time and speed is the key with this stuff. You haven't got loads of time to mess around, and if you can get a helping hand to do that cutting in, or just to take some of the pressure off you while you do this, then it does make it a lot easier. But what we can see is that this second coat is definitely a lot easier to do than that first coat. It takes a lot less effort, and that first coat had me a little bit concerned that the whole thing would be a real hard graft, but this second coat, I think because of the porosity of that concrete, goes on a lot easier. So that's it, that's our second coat. And what I can say, it's a lot easier than the first coat, and it looks really thick. It looks like There's about 30 years of gloss on there. And that is just our first top coat, remember. We've got one more to go tomorrow. So I'm going to leave this to set overnight, just like we did before. It's going to stay at about 8 or 9 degrees for most of the night, so hopefully it should go nice and hard. And then we'll come back in the morning and get that final top coat on. There's a couple of little divots and bits and bobs where the paint hasn't quite gone in. Tomorrow I'll just touch them in. I think in hindsight, if I'd have gone around and done a few more repairs, like you can see there's a little hole just there and there. If I'd have just spent a little bit more time, I might have got a slightly better finish. That just depends what sort of finish you want. All I wanted to do really was cure that horrible dusty concrete. Now you don't need many tools to resin a garage floor. A friend does help to make it that little bit quicker, but what you do need is to get your name in the hat for a 9-piece M18 Milwaukee power tool kit. On Ultimate Tool competitions, we kit people out every single week, and this week it could be you. So make sure you head over to the link in the description and get your name in the hat for this lot. I'll see you over there. Now that first top coat seemed to go off a lot quicker, and the next morning I was able to get on with another coat. So we did exactly the same thing this time around. We got that second top coat on, and you can see it looks really thick. Every single time you do another coat, it seems to thicken and look even better. But let's wait and see what that top coat sets like and how it looks. So that is our final coat on, and well, it looks like liquid. It actually is extremely impressive. Now, as you know, I didn't do a huge amount of surface preparation, but even with that being the case, it's transformed this garage. It's kind of left a glassy liquid look on the floor, and it just looks really impressive. It's gone off absolutely rock hard. So in comparison to a normal garage floor paint, I'd go with this all day long. Now there are other garage floor solutions to transform a garage. If you want to see those, hit one of these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.